Leeds has so much potential. Nowadays there's so many people that, don't see further than a screen or don't see further than a city, and actually it's so good for your mental health to look further. There's a big world out there, you're just a small part of it. Nowadays there's just so many ads that pass you by, and you've really got to stand out to get cut through. We should never be settling for good enough work. It should always be the best we can do.
Welcome to the Leeds Creative Folk podcast, where some of the most interesting and influential figures from the Leeds creative scene share what drives their creativity and what it means to be part of the Leeds Creative Village. My guest for this episode is Vix Harrison from Principles in Leeds. We chat about being a creative who can't really draw, the magic of Cadbury's advertising, and taking inspiration from the world around you. As a kid, were you creative, would you say, looking back? Would you call yourself a creative kid?
Yeah, definitely. I was one of those kids, though. Creative for me was just getting involved. So I was always a kid covered in mud, covered in paint. If we did a project at school, my parents knew about it because I'd come home and I was covered in it.
Was your family a sort of creative sort of household?
Weirdly, not
really?
at all. My dad was a salesman who travelled up and down the country, and there's no background in my family whatsoever of creativity, and neither of my sisters have gone into that role. So I am like the odd one out, as most creatives are when in the world.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm one of four, and my brothers and my sister were really good artists, and I was a rubbish artist. I quite enjoyed it, but I was terrible at it.
Yeah.
So growing up, I always felt like they were much more creative and arty than I was. But I'm the only one now with a creative job, like they all do.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny how it goes. Do you have a memory of kind of what your first sort of creative endeavour was?
I think the first thing where it was kind of a self-made project kind of thing was I was always a real swot at school. And I remember we were doing a project on the Victorians, and I finished my work and I asked the teacher if I could go and make a Victorian mine. And it got really quite elaborate.
Victorian mine?
Mine, yeah.
Like
really
a coal
random.
mine?
Yeah, like a coal mine. Although
Wow,
I did live in Selby, which was a mining town, so maybe that's why.
Okay.
But yeah, so I went away and made a mine, and it had working light. I went a bit elaborate because every day that I finished a bit earlier, I went and made this mine. It had working lights and everything else.
That's brilliant. Yeah. I really like that. And do you remember was there a point where you felt like, I'd really like to have a creative job? I'd really like to do that for work, something creative.
I think I always knew I enjoyed it. And when I knew I wanted to go into a creative career, again, because I was really, academically, I was doing really well. So my parents used to always say to me, you can do whatever you want. And I actually found it a lot of pressure as a kid because I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And I've been told I can do anything if I don't pick the right thing. So I think because of that, I was just concentrating, well, what do I actually enjoy doing? And also I think I'd seen a lot of adults in my life not looking like they enjoyed work, on a Sunday night, looking a bit like, oh God, it's Monday tomorrow. So in my head, I just wanted a job that I would actually enjoy going to on a Monday and actually be excited on a Sunday night about going to. So
did you go to university or?
Yeah, so it was funny actually, the story, because I was at school, obviously, and I chose all the art subjects, as your options and things that you could. And my parents were very much, because I was academic, they were trying to push me down that route all the time. And at my school, it was business studies and graphic design. So I remember on my last parents' evening, my parents saying, oh, she wants to go and do art at college, like it was some crazy thing. And my teacher being like, it's ridiculous, you should be doing business studies, you should be doing this and the other. So I had to really kind of fight to go to college and do graphic design. And then I came to what is now Leeds Art University. It was College of Art back then. And it was, I wanted to do graphic design, but I really wanted to go to that college, but they only did advertising / graphic design. So I went into it with the view to go into graphic design. But when I got on the course, it was very heavy advertising. And then luckily, it was a really good fit.
Okay, so it wasn't like you were going into it thinking, I like being creative. Advertising could be a good route. Yeah. It was more just that was the course that fitted with what you wanted to do.
Yeah, definitely.
You were saying before that you're not great at drawing or that sort of art. But so it's interesting then that you were drawn in that kind of direction. But did you find that you were kind of able to do that through like design or through other tools? You didn't need that sort of almost physical skill.
Yeah, definitely. I think a great idea, once you've got the great idea, is so easy to visually show. I think I was saying before, you can sketch an idea out on a Post-it note, and if it's a good enough idea, you can get it. So you don't need that kind of elaborate, visuals and stuff. But in my job, I need enough kind of skills to be able to get that big idea and then sell it to people. And then at that point, we've got a big design team. We'll get in visualizers before it gets to the client. So as much as possible, my role, I like to be big top end ideas and things, and doing as much as possible. So I'd rather quickly sketch something to a standard that I can present than spend hours crafting that, because I know there's so many stages beyond the big idea to get all that kind of stuff crafted.
Yeah, that's really interesting. One of the things we talk about a lot here is, we'll come up with ideas, and then it's the thing of getting an idea out of our heads into our clients' heads. Do you know what I mean? Is that, for them making the sort of leap from, we can show references or examples or whatever, but that leap to what they're going to get. Is that something you have to think quite a bit about in your world? Definitely. And what's the sort of, have you learned over the years what the kind of keys to that are?
It's weird. It's such a client by client basis. Clients that are very creatively minded, and sometimes you can go, do you know what, we've had loads of ideas at this stage, and rather than whittle it down, we're willing to show them these really basic scamps because we know they'll get it. But there's other clients that aren't as visual and they need much more explaining. Sometimes it's nice to go in with a big idea and a mood board, because there's another thing at the moment with AI and stuff. We find ourselves going, oh, it's great now because we can create these images quite quickly on AI, but then you show that to a client and it's too polished. So they'll look at it and be like, oh, I don't like that woman's colour hair, or I don't like this, I'm not sure about that style of sofa. But right at the start, you need them to just sign off the idea, because all the rest comes later. So sometimes if an idea is too polished, it actually works against you as well. So it's getting
because
that
it
balance.
Feels like more like this is actually what we're going to get, rather than we're taking inspiration from this.
Yeah,
is it that sort of thing? Yeah. Where do you kind of look for inspiration? Do you have sort of particular places that you go, or things that you follow, or whatever, to give you ideas, or is it just sort of coming to you in day-to-day life sort of thing?
I think generally in life, I'm all about experiences. So I'm always wanting to do things, that whole kind of expanding yourself kind of thing. So I love travel. If there's a new restaurant in Leeds, I want to go and try it out. It's as many different experiences, watching all the latest TV shows, because a big part of my job is getting into the audience mindset. So as much of kind of, I suppose, popular media, like as much as I sometimes hate social media and you find yourself scrolling, it is actually really helpful in my job to know what kind of things people are, into. So, my husband says to me, "Are you on your phone again?" "Oh, it's for work." That kind of thing. But just as much as possible, just opening yourself up to as many different experiences, because then you can put yourself into more people's mindsets. Do you know what I mean? Be open to more things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really interested in the thing of, within our work, the obvious places to look for inspiration are, whether it's other people's videos or, TV, film, that sort of thing, because it's sort of within the same medium. But I'm really interested in how we can look sort of, further afield into other kind of art forms for inspiration. So whether it's like, looking at, it's always the balance, isn't it? Because you can easily sound really pretentious with this sort of thing, but also I think there's real value in it. So like, you're looking at painting, and you're looking at, how a frame is composed, and how you can use that with, how we film things, or with music and things like that. You can feel like you can kind of get inspiration from, from all sorts of different sources. Is that something you feel like you kind of bring into your work, like looking sort
definitely.
of all over?
Oh, yeah, like I said, keeping your mind open. You go to the theatre, you go to art galleries. It's interesting for me because I love traveling and things. I tend not to go into as many art galleries and stuff when I'm abroad and places, because I find there's more inspiration in the streets. So, like street art and just the architecture and just the feeling of being somewhere.
I've got a particular sort of obsession with the sky. Again, it's one of these things, you start talking about it and you feel really, a bit silly, but it's like you say, I think there is something about being out in nature in general.
Yeah, I read something the other day that really stuck with me, and it's kind of for mental health reasons. Apparently looking at a horizon is so good for you, and nowadays there's so many people that, don't see further than a screen or don't see further than a city. And actually it's so good for your mental health to look further. And a lot of that is about understanding your place in the world. There's a big world out there. You're just a small part of it. If you're, in a room, on your Xbox, whatever, 24/7, you're not experiencing that and you're not seeing that. So you actually need kind of a mental state just to see a bigger horizon ahead of you.
Would you say there's a person, either somebody that you've worked with or like an artist or something that has most inspired you, sort of?
It's an interesting one because I could probably list off, loads of the big advertising greats and things. But for me, I actually look to brands for inspiration. So, for example, someone like Cadbury's, when that gorilla ad first came out, I'd just got into advertising then. And at the time I was working on DRTV, so nothing as what felt like sexy as a Cadbury's ad. And it literally, no exaggeration, I was on the edge of my seat going, what is this? When the gorilla's sniffing the air and there's that suspense. And I was like, I'd never seen anything like it. And I was literally on the edge of my seat, what is this? And then it didn't disappoint, because sometimes an ad can be intriguing, can't it? And you go, oh, I thought it was going to be really good. And I just remember being absolutely blown away with it. And, they have the braveness to stick with that, a cup and a half of joy. And then they've done that recent, the garage ad where it's all about the relationships between the teenager. And it's like, how can one line be something so kind of abstract and throwaway as a gorilla playing a set of drums to be this really in-depth relationship between daughter and father? And it's like, it's just so clever and so powerful.
One of the things that really got me excited about filmmaking was the Guinness surfer ad.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it for the first time and I was just absolutely blown away. I was so hooked. And at the time, it was one of those where I used to just sit watching TV, just waiting for that ad to come on. It's incredible, isn't it, when brands manage to create those sort of cultural moments. Yeah. I wonder, is that sort of gone? Do you think that's still...
I really hope not. There's a lot of rules coming around, like HFSS, high fat, sugar and salt at the moment.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be, restrictions, perhaps, in the same way there was on the smoking ads. And I'm just hoping that it goes the same way as it did with smoking ads, that suddenly you get these really cool, surreal ads because you've got to try a bit harder. And actually, if the rule is you can't show your product in the ad, think how creative the ads will be. They'll be like Guinness, where it's just using the, the black and the white, and like the gorilla ad where just has a logo at the end, there's no chocolate in the ad. So I think maybe it will actually push brands to do that. So it could be quite exciting. I hope. I really hope.
Have you got a piece of work or something that you've created that you feel like you're most kind of proud of?
It's hard to say, isn't it? Because you're like, some of my clients might listen to it, like, why wasn't it my piece of work? But I think the Seabrook TV stuff we've done, I just love the art directional style we went for that. And again, that the client was so brave and they let us use those really bright colours. And, the pack's quite small within that. Do you know what I mean? There's a temptation a lot of time the clients were like, oh, well, can we open on? And someone opened a bag of crisps right at the front of the frame. And they were brave with that. And they let us, say, this is the art direction we want to take. This is the styling. It's all symmetry. But they really bought into it. And again, they've done a few ads through that now. We've kept the same line. We're building on that. So it's becoming a bigger and stronger brand. We have a thing at Principles about creating unforgettable brands. And it's just, having a bit of entertainment. If you give somebody an emotion, you make them laugh, even if you make them cry, they're going to remember your ad because they felt something. And for me, what's a shame at the moment is there's so many ads that come on and it's just a bit like, oh, so what? Or even worse ones that you go, what? I don't even understand what that was kind of telling me. Nowadays, there's just so many ads that, pass you by, and you've really got to, stand out to get cut through.
What do you do if you get sort of stuck creatively? Have you got any sort of go-to processes to help sort of unlock those ideas?
But when I remember being a student and, the first couple of years, I literally, I read a book called Hey Whipple, Squeeze This, and I can't remember who the author was. And he literally wrote a whole page of deadlock tricks. And I copied them down. And at one point, when I was like at uni and stuff, I used to go, and it had silly things like look out of the window and find the first thing and make the ad about that. Do you know what I mean? Think of the opposite of what you want people's reactions to be and sell that. And it was just like a million different, do you know what I mean? Like what rhymes with it. It was just, and it was literally a list of about 100 things. And it's funny because I think
any of those just sort of almost feed instinctively into your process.
Yeah, definitely. And now it's, I think I said before, you have a especially an advertising creative, you do think in a different way to most people, because it's almost like creative problem solving. You get a brief and you have to think about it from every single different angle. Every now and then, obviously, you'll get a big brief. It can be quite overwhelming. You've got all these different ideas and maybe it doesn't come to you instantly. Just going for a walk really helps. Do you know what I mean? Like, I sometimes say I come up with toilet ideas. So I'll be like, sat at my desk a little bit, kind of, and then I'll go to the loo and it's like, oh, great. And I think it's just that change of scenery, doing something different.
Yeah, I was talking with my kids last night about the idea of there's no such thing as a bad idea. And their response to that was, no, that's really stupid. Obviously, there are bad ideas. But what do you think about that as a sort of concept? Because I guess the thinking is that, even if it's a bad idea, it could lead to something good. What do you think about no such thing as a bad idea?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the amount of times I've been in a brainstorm or something and someone go, oh, that won't work. It's like, no, at this point, it's about everybody getting their ideas out. And it's funny because the amount of times I've been in a room with another creative thinking of ideas, and there's always that you don't want to look stupid in front of people, although I think I've probably got past that now. But, you'll go, oh, an idea, not this, but something like, but you actually mean this idea, but I'm not going to commit to it at this level. Do you know what I mean? And the amount of times, one of you will say, oh, this isn't great, but what about something like this? And then the other one goes, oh yeah, and it inspires another person. Do you know what I mean? Or, I mean, if you read my notes when I'm coming up with ideas, somebody once described my notepad that it looked like a toilet door,
Okay.
because I just write, it's like a shotgun thing and I write down so many things. And my thing is, if it's not written down, it's in my head. So I write down bad ideas to get them out as well.
I do find it so interesting how different people operate differently with that sort of thing. Like exactly like you say, within our team, I know there are people who, a brief comes in, we can read it out and then just sit in a room and throw sort of ideas around, and they'll typically start quite badly and then evolve into something a bit better. And there are definitely, like you say, there are others who would much rather just have that little bit of time to digest it and to sort of, get your brain going on it before they do that. And I guess it's just, different people, the way different people's brains work.
It's interesting because you think, oh, you're all in the same career, you're all creative, but even as creatives, you're all so individual and different. And I suppose if that wasn't true, every ad would be the same, do you know what I mean, from everybody. So that always amazes me when you throw a brief out into a room. And it's very, very rare that if we have a few teams working on it, that you come back and two people have the same idea. Do you know what I mean? Which is the same brief, which, it had strategy and everything, it's really homed you down in one direction, but still there's so many hundreds of ways of doing it. So it always really interests me what other people will come up with.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, it feels like everyone's sort of having the same conversation about AI and the impact on kind of creative work. What's your sort of instinctive feel about that?
It's a weird one because I know that a lot of people seem quite panicky about it. But for me, I feel like the creative industry is maybe the one that should be least afraid of AI. AI doesn't have real human emotions. And when it comes to, like I was saying before, if you want to make an unforgettable ad, it's about tapping into people's emotions. And I don't see how AI that doesn't actually experience its own emotions can ever kind of tailor into that. It never has real life experiences, which is what, as a creative, you tap into. So I think AI is a great tool. Like already, in the agency, it can save you time. Before I might have sit thinking, oh, actually, I need to think of 50,000 things that begin with C to help me think of this concept because I want it, and then you just go to AI and you say, what rhymes with this? What does this? And it can give you a quick list, or, you can input a load of stuff and, you can get, decrease the amount of information you've got, if you've got reams of text and things. But in terms of actually true creativity, I don't see AI as a threat.
I really go back and forth on it because, say, for example, like you said, coming up with a kind of unforgettable brand, I guess the argument would be that what AI can do is sort of examine all the other brands that have been successful, look at what's made them successful, and then almost use that formula to create something successful. So I guess what's lacking there is originality. And like you said, definitely. That is the thing that AI will, as far as I understand it, will never have, is originality. But then it's whether that is enough to be to sort of enough value in that to stop AI from taking over. And I really go back and forth on it of like, feeling like, well, no, like you say, I think there is a certain innate creativity that we have as humans that AI will never have, on one hand, and feeling like, well, no, but that's fine, that's great. And actually it gives us license to sort of really lean into that and be more expressive, be more creative, because that's where our value is. But then on the other hand, of feeling like, well, actually they can do a kind of, AI can do such a good sort of replica of that actually that's going to be good enough for people. And
it feels like it'd have a lifespan though, doesn't it? Because if you're not getting any unique content, maybe it'll work for a year or so, but then it's always going to be churning out the same things. Even if you put in, like Guinness surfer ad, do this for this product, I don't think it would get the nuances, would it? And I think a lot of things that work really nice at the moment in advertising and really helps you remember them is emotions. And, the Cadbury's one I spoke about, it's those real subtle nuances. And surely AI is never going to get to that subtle nuance that human interaction. Do you know what I mean? I don't feel like they're ever going to quite get it. But I think, to your point, there's going to be plenty of brands that goes, this looks great. Do you know what I mean? Press a button. Do you know what I mean? If it gets to that stage and it's good enough. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's the thing, that we should never be settling for good enough work. It should always be, the best we can do.
Do you feel part of a sort of creative scene in Leeds, or do you kind of just operate more just within your kind of sphere of work?
It's an interesting one. I've always been really proud to be part of a northern creative network. Like I've always used, northern production companies, a lot of Leeds photographers actually as well. So I'm quite proud to have done that. And a lot of the ads I've done, in the production company I've used, the quality of it is completely on par with the stuff coming out of London, and a lot of the time at much more reasonable prices. So I think there's definitely a northern network out there. So much of it is still Manchester weighted, all these events and stuff. So I think there's a massive potential in Leeds. There's kind of a real thirst for it. We did a event at the beginning of the year with Boutique, and it was all about every second counts and about the merits of the different media, and if different ones outweigh the other in their impact. If you literally had 1 second. And we had so many people get involved. We had so many people turn up, and I think there's a real thirst for it because there isn't as many of them at the moment. There's so many people wanting this kind of content and stuff to go to. So it feels like there's a bit of a buzz and excitement around all this kind of stuff, but it still feels very Manchester heavy for me when I look at northern events and stuff. So it would be nice to see more of things in Leeds.
If you could sort of wave a magic wand and change how the creative scene in Leeds looks, would that be more about just being more connected, or would that be about a sort of event that brings people together?
I think that would be great. The big, massive thing for me, Leeds has so much potential. And we've got like 3 massive universities in Leeds, one being Leeds Art University, which has got, really prestigious courses, some of the best in the country. We've got Northern School of Dance. It feels like we've got all this raw talent, but unfortunately they all go to London or they go to Manchester. So there needs to be a way of keeping our talent. And we're, again, part of this year. Have you heard of School of Thought in Leeds? So we're one of the host agencies again this year. And that's just such a great initiative because it's about, you could already work in creative. You could be, you could be an accountant that decides you want a career change. You could be a graduate. And it's just encouraging people, to think, how to come up with ideas, how to present ideas, how to pitch, all those kind of skills. But also the fact that, there's 12 different agencies around in the north, quite a few in Leeds, and you're getting all these kind of graduate stuff to actually open their eyes and see, look, there's all these really cool agencies doing this great stuff. So it's interesting. It's working both ways. It's open our eyes up to the talent that's out there, but also them to the agencies and things. And it's weird because I did a similar thing. I did D&AD workshops I won't say how many years ago, but they were all Manchester based back then. So it's just really nice now that it's Leeds and Manchester, and I think there might be a few Sheffield agencies and things. So it's just, I think as a north we've really cracked it, but I think Leeds itself has so much potential that we need to get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, like you say, it does feel like it's on the up, and yeah, there's definitely a lot I'd love to see it over the next few years, but it does feel like it's really heading in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely.
I've got a few quick fire questions for you. What's your favourite hidden gem in Leeds?
I think for me, it's actually, I live really close to Harewood House. And it's weird because it got a reputation maybe of being a bit of a fuddy-duddy stately home, but I mean, for a start, when you go there, I mean, the landscapes are what Turner painted. Do you know what I mean? They're what inspired him to paint. And at the moment, they've actually got an exhibition about that. But the current Lord Harewood is quite a forward-thinking. You know, he's quite a cool guy, and he's really pushing the arts and things. So they had an Anthony Burrell exhibition last year, for example, and they have the big food festivals, but they have theatre on and stuff. So he's really pushing all the arts through it. So it's a really kind of, and it's literally as on the outskirts of Leeds as you can get, but it's definitely worth a visit.
Yeah, 100%. If Leeds was a flavour of ice cream, what would it be?
Ooh. I don't know why pistachios come into my head. I think there's something quite natural and raw about it, but it's different enough and interesting enough.
Who is a Leeds creative that people should know about?
I mean, some of the photographers we use are amazing. Kate Abbey, for example, she's actually moved maybe into the border now into North Yorkshire. But, you know, when I first started using her, she was very much Leeds based. But yeah, the photographers are like second to none around here. They're like amazing.
If you had to describe Leeds in 3 words, what would they be?
Could I say up and coming?
There you go. Perfect.
That was easy.
That fits perfectly. Where do you go in Leeds to feel inspired?
Do you know what is great in Leeds? The light festival they do every year. It gets bigger and better every year, and it's so impressive. And I love that that's something we own.
100, yeah, really I love it. Yeah,
and the fact that so many people get involved, and you see all different things, and you kind of realise how big the city is actually, because a night of doing and trying to do it, you're absolutely knackered, aren't you, walking around? But yeah, it's so impressive, some of the stuff they put on there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it, Sarah.
It wasn't as painful as I thought.